Welcome back to another episode of the Spraying Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Martinovich, joining you live from 2023, October. No, that's not true.
No.
Where are we at here, Jesse?
It is February 2024, but the interview that you are about to see was filmed in October 2023.
And we're doing this because of leap year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're blaming it on leap year.
It's
we
leap
got our
year.
date here.
Leap day is this week. So we took an old episode and we leaped it right into the new year.
So we have a great podcast coming up, though. Who are we interviewing today?
Robert Dunne.
Robert Dunne. And where do people know Robert Dunne from?
Robert Dunne is probably best known for playing a younger David Rossi, right? Is the guy pronounced
David Rossi,
that right?
yeah,
David
from,
Rossi.
Criminal Minds, right?
Yep, and played by Joe Mantegna. So,
Yeah.
you know,
So we're going to be
main
talking
guy.
to Robert. He's an actor, editor, animator. And at the time, he was promoting his upcoming movie, Cannibal Comedians, which still has not released yet. So there is some relevancy here.
Mm-hmm.
But we also get into talking a little bit about film festivals and the importance of getting your stuff out there, which we're going to have a great conversation afterwards where you have a ton of experience with film
Yes.
festivals.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah. So we'll get right into it. Our past, future episode with Robert Dunne. But stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Loose Frame Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Martinovich, and joining me now is my guest, Robert Dunne. How are you, buddy?
That's me. I'm Robert Dunne.
You are Robert Dunne. If not, then we're in big trouble.
Yeah. Oh, crap.
So, welcome. I didn't even tee you up correctly. You're actor, filmmaker, animator.
Yeah.
Robert Dunne.
Yeah, all those
You do
things.
many things.
Man, I primarily act and write. I would, the directing is like an art form that I heavily respect, and I'm like, oh man, can I do that? I don't know. There's so much responsibility, so I stick to the acting and writing. But yeah, and what else did you say? Animator?
Animator.
Yeah, animator. Yeah.
From another life, but
From
still,
another life. Oh man, I'll take you back to a time called newgrounds.com. And I used to create cartoons. That was like before YouTube, and I would make silly Flash animation. But I'm not like I don't like work for Pixar or anything. But I'm a cartoon guy, so I love making it.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. So I usually like to set these things up by getting a little personal history before we get into your career. You sort of took a circuitous path to get to LA, which is where you're at right now. So you're originally from New York, right? And then you somehow made it down to Florida.
I was born in Brooklyn, but I grew up in Florida. I grew up in Spring Hill. And I don't know if it's transitioned into the acting from there, which it's really hard to be an actor in Spring Hill, Florida.
Yeah, so for people who are not from Tampa Bay or Florida area, where is Spring Hill?
Spring Hill, I always say it's, please correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't been here in a long time. It's like an hour north of Tampa, right?
And not between much, right?
Yeah.
You're sort of out there.
In Hernando County, right next to Brooksville.
Which Brooksville is also sort of out in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So how does someone who's growing up in a very rural part of Florida get the acting bug?
Good question. So I originally had the animation bug, and I went to school at the Art Institute, which used to exist by Raymond James Stadium. Yep. And but I started to really be interested in, like, I was asking teachers, like, well, who does the voices on the video games? And because it was like game design too. Who does the storytelling? Like, how do you get a job as a writer? I never was asking questions about like what I should be asking. And I was gifted, or I bought myself, they were cheap at Walmart. It was one of those, like, this was before HD, those like mini DV tapes, cameras. That's what they're called, cameras. And I would shoot stupid movies with my friends. I would drag them out. My friends hated it. None of them were actors. I'm just like, no, man, be in the movie. It's going to be so cool. And I realized while I was going to school, I cared way more about my silly little movies than I did the major that I was studying. And even though I still loved animation, there was just something about acting in these stupid films that was so much fun. And I had like one other friend who made movies too, and anytime he asked me to be in it, I'd be like, yes. But I realized people do this for real. Why don't I give it a go? But I didn't know how to get started. I didn't know what a headshot was. I didn't know what an acting resume was. And my mom tried to help me out. And my mom is not film savvy at all. But I think she looked up someone, I don't know. She brought me to this one lady's house in the middle of nowhere who we arrive at her house, and she's supposed to, I guess, help me with acting. I don't know what that means.
Was she an acting coach or just someone that your mother looked up and was like, well, she acted in a school play once?
I think I found her in the Yellow Pages and it said, I'll help an actor. I don't know what that means. I don't know what any of this means. Anyway, we met her and it was kind of weird. And she said she was part of some guild, not SAG or anything. But anyway, that was an interesting encounter. I didn't get any help from her. And then I took like a few acting classes and learned about the basics of like auditioning. And I would just, I would go on, I think it was Green Room Orlando and Mandy.com. And any audition I could get, I was driving out from Spring Hill to Orlando multiple times a week. So it was like, it's a 2-hour drive for the tiniest little audition. Or Tampa, I would come out here mostly for commercial work. And, there was, I remember there was one casting office in Tampa that was kind of wild because there was a casting director that ran it. I don't know if you know the casting.
I'm not going to mention the person's name, but I'm pretty sure I know who you're talking about.
Okay. She was very strict.
She is no longer around, by the way.
She died?
No, she just her agency. She's retired now.
Oh,
okay.
So she doesn't work in the business at all.
No.
Okay, because
we're still not going to say her name.
I don't really remember her name, honestly, but I remember I would go into an audition and she was pretty vile. And like, if you came in and you didn't have 4 staples of your resume on your headshot, she would like send you home. And I'm like, what? Like, who cares? But I remember I booked like a Bright House commercial once, and she was nice to me for a week, and then she forgot about me.
It's because you bought her dinner that week.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember I left her office one time, and because I was moving to LA, and I was like, well, I don't like to burn bridges, so I went up to her. I forgot what I was auditioning for, and I was like, hey, it's been awesome to like audition here, and I'm moving to Los Angeles in like 2 weeks or so. And she was like, oh, you're moving to Los Angeles, huh? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, are you SAG yet? I was like, no. It's like, well, good luck, because you'll be just another face in the crowd. And I was like, all right, thanks. Well, my suitcase is at the door. I got a nice meeting you. And I was like,
very encouraging.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell?
A nurturing person. So you really bootstrapped your career. You weren't like a theater kid in high school.
No, I did. I guess when I was younger, there was like some theater stuff at churches that I would like. I don't know. That's the furthest I went with theater. Yeah. And when I was little, I did tap dance and I did like community theater stuff. But when I got into the acting stuff, that wasn't until later, and it was mostly in film and stuff.
Yeah. So what made you want to go out to LA? Just the opportunities, the idea of it?
Well, I worked with this guy named Tony Armour. I don't know if anyone knows him here in Florida. But he produced a movie out in Jacksonville, and I was in it. It was like my first role, I guess, in a feature. And I had met someone who was
that Sandrima Rising?
Sandrima Rising, yeah.
Okay.
And
I've been around for a long time.
Cool. Me too. And the DP on that movie, he lived in Los Angeles, and I just knew at that moment, I'm like, I have to get out there somehow. And he had a room available. So after that movie, I just planned to move out because I didn't know anyone in LA. So
I don't get an opportunity to talk to actors very often in this podcast. We try to vary up the guests from week to week. So I'm curious, when you got out to LA, were you just dejected by it? It's like, oh man, like this is not the place I'm supposed to be. Like it's just a bunch of fake people. Or were you like, no, this was the right move? Like, what was your initial thoughts?
It definitely felt like it was the right move. And I felt like I adapted to LA really quickly. I know it gets the stereotype of fake people, and I've definitely met those people to the point where I think I've been scarred. because I don't ever want to become that. So, but I meet fake people everywhere, but I also meet the most genuine people everywhere, including LA. So some of the most like, I don't know, heartwarming people I've met in that town and, that little town. And, but to answer your question, I definitely felt like, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. There was just more opportunity for auditions and stuff, and I don't know how fast things got built in other states, because other states started to become like little industries of themselves. But at the time, I think it was still like LA, New York.
Yeah,
you got one to two choices. So I definitely felt comfortable, and I knew that I was going out for a lot of things, way more than Florida, and then they also weren't 2-hour drives, which was nice. So
going back to your loving, caring casting director.
Yeah.
Once you got out there, how did you be more than just a face in the crowd? Was it just your hard work and putting yourself out there?
Yeah. So that's always a hard question. It's like, what makes you unique?
Yeah.
It's like nothing. No, I don't know. I definitely, when I moved out, I feel like I got put through the ringer at times, coming from Florida, dealing with like certain people that almost like made me feel scared to go out to be an actor. So when I got to LA, I was like petrified of like casting directors, everyone. I'm like, everyone's out to get me. But it really just, I really don't, I try not to focus too heavily on, I don't know if this would be related to like your question, but like branding yourself and stuff like that. I don't know how to answer that question of like, how did you stand out? It's like, I just do what I do. And if that connects with you, then great. My thing is I just want to collaborate with cool people, and all my answers are super artsy, so I'm sorry if sorry if there's any eye rolling.
We get into all kinds of things in this podcast,
but yeah, it's really just to like move an audience and all the actor stuff that comes with it.
What was your first, not big break? We can talk about that later. But you're like, what was the first thing you can remember being cast in once you got out to LA?
Whoa.
Because you've done obviously stuff here in Florida, but I feel like once you make that jump to LA, like you need something in your mind to solidify, like, I made the right choice.
Yeah, I would probably say the first commercial I booked a like fantasy football commercial, and it was probably my first like big role, like job, I should say. It was the first time like I'd ever been on a set, where it's like, you have like a trailer and stuff. Like I never experienced that before. Yeah. And that's when I was like, yeah, this is cool. This is what I want to do. And everyone else is cool on set. And all the other actors were cool. Like this is the environment I want to surround myself in. So I'd probably say that.
Do you get nervous going in the audition process?
No. It's more exciting. Like, I don't know. I hate to describe it nervous, like, it's when you get excited about something, but you're like half nervous too. But I just use auditions as like, I only have 5 minutes or less, but this room belongs to me, and I want to show them like what I've been working on. I try really hard to not, because there's easy to like get sides for an audition, and you try to think of what you think they want, and I don't do that. I try to stop myself and be like, this is how I'm doing it. It doesn't mean I'm doing it anything. I'm not like I'm being weird about it. Like, but I just do it the way I want to do it. And I try to look at the audition as this is my time. And this isn't like, and also remember, which got me over being a fear of casting directors, which is silly because casting directors, they're in it just as much as you are. They're getting hired by someone to find the actor, and they want you to do good, because if you do good, they're like, oh, thank God. Right. Like, I maybe I'll have another job after this. Like, so we're on the same team. Yep. And so when I walk into the room, I know they're rooting for me. Why wouldn't they? So
yeah. It's interesting. I might be misquoting this particular story, but Tarantino was relating once, I think it was Scorsese. They were talking together, and Scorsese told Tarantino asked for advice, and Scorsese basically said, if I can give you only one piece of advice, is let the actor in addition come in and do their thing without any notes. Because they're going to come in and give you something in that first take that you've never thought of. You never wrote the character to do that, right? Because you know in your mind what you wanted.
Yeah.
But if you don't give that actor that first try, you're never going to see something different than what you want. Which I think goes to what you were saying, is that you don't want to come in preconceived, like, how do I give them what they wanted? Give them what you think the character is. So I think that's really good advice.
I think it is too. And if they, I think the second take maybe is like when they interject and they give notes, and that's also a sign, something you have to remember in auditions is just taking direction. So, I totally get that. But there have been times where I remember I had an audition once for this show, and it was I don't want to like say what it was, but it was basically the character I found out later was supposed to speak very monotone. So I come in and I kind of give a performance, and then they're like, no, like give less.
Yeah.
And so I did, and they're like, no, way less, to the point where they're like, honestly, just talk like Siri. And I was like, what? Okay.
That's a pretty good direction, though. You're like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I can do that.
So which felt weird. Yeah. I'm like, I feel like I'm intentionally giving you a bad performance, but that's what they wanted.
That's interesting. So in most careers, you have your coworkers, right? And you go in day out and you see the same people. And film's not that way, right? It's different people you're working with week to week or day to day. What makes a good director, in your opinion?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. I like directors that kind of they know what they want and they have control, but they are open to hearing what you have to say. Because I've worked with directors that it's like, nope, this is what we're doing, and you kind of you have to respect that. You're like, all right, we're making this guy's story. And then I've had directors that almost seem like, and I'm not like poo-pooing on it, but they almost seem like they're having me direct, where it's like, I want you to do whatever you want. And it's like, I get that, but I want a little bit because my job is to tell your story, and I want to make sure I nail that. But
right, that's I've never heard someone say that, but you're right. Like, I like coloring inside the lines, but I need the lines. Like, I need to know what it looks like.
Right. And it's fine if it's, because I've worked on a project where, early years ago, where there was no script and everything was improvised, and maybe in that environment it's fine. But I almost like don't want complete free range. I want a collaboration, because every movie that comes out, it's never just like one person did it. So I like to work with the director where we're on the same page, and it's like we're going back and forth. And so, they'll have a vision, of course, and they will let me do whatever I want, but there's some kind of control over it, where if something goes too far askew, they're like, well, okay, this is what we're going to try.
Back in.
Yeah.
So what was your first, I'll ask the big break question now. What was the first big opportunity that you had where people maybe recognize you from, or you look back on and say, wow, that was a good moment in my career?
Yeah, it was definitely when I booked Criminal Minds. That was the big one. I remember getting a call from my agent that they were looking for this small role on the show, and it's in a half an hour. Here's the lines. And I was like, okay. And I drove over, because they do everything in Burbank, or is it like Glendale, Burbank area?
Not to interrupt, but just for context.
Yeah.
How far into Criminal Minds was this? Was this still like a newer show, or has it been established and they've been around for a while at this point?
It would have been season 8.
Okay, so they definitely had a huge fan base.
Yeah. So I went out for that, and it was so fast, and I didn't realize at the time, but the role was for fans of the show, is to play the lead, David Rossi, younger. So it was going to be this flashback, and I don't think I realized at the time who the character was yet. And then later I was like, oh crap, this is the main character, but I got there and it was so quick. It was like a very rush casting, probably why I had to be there in a half hour. And I auditioned, they told me to wait. Then I went to like another room, and auditioned again. So it was almost like audition callback back to back. It
Yeah.
was really weird. And then I was driving home and I got the call that I got it. Like I didn't even make it home yet. So it was like a very strange afternoon.
Yeah.
It's like from telling me you have an audition to a couple hours later, I would have booked
So
it.
when did they tell you you were playing an established role?
I mean, I think not that they like told me. I think maybe it was implied because it's like in the script. But yeah, that was crazy. And then so I had my first. That was my first television role, and I'm playing his character's like in Vietnam, so they're like, we're gonna shave your head, and I'm like, okay, like what am I gonna say? No, like now's not the time. I hated the way I looked with it, but it's fine. But even that day, like I don't know, sometimes you can just connect with people who are just super cool. And I remember one of the writers, who's one of my dear friends today, Rick Dunkel, he was a writer on the show for years, eventually made producer. And sometimes you could just tell you can joke with people. And I remember you get sides on the day, and Rick comes over and we're talking, and there's just something about him. And I just said, like, who wrote this shit? And which could have gone really bad, but he started laughing because like we just picked up on each other's sense of humor, and it was such a great day. And then a couple years went by, and I get a call that for season 10 they want to bring the character back for a little small thing, and I'm like, oh, cool, like it's exciting. It's like, oh, they want to bring me back, like, and it's like no audition. That wasn't the case. So I get there and I read again. I guess they brought me in again because they're like, I don't know, can the kid act anymore?
Yeah.
Like, did he gain 300 pounds? I don't know. So I get there and I read for the same casting director, and it was like me and a co-star. And then he tells the co-star to leave. And he's like, yeah, so I need to talk to you. You did great. But there's another episode after this one that's much bigger, and we're talking to, it's not official yet. We're going to get Ben Savage on to like be with you in the episode. But we want to make sure you can do this because it's just a much bigger role than a little co-star that I was doing. And I was like, oh God, okay. What do I got to do? And so he gave me 4 scenes to read on like after the weekend. I must have got on a Thursday or Friday, and my audition was, I guess audition, it's weird, I don't know what you would call it, I guess it's an audition for Monday. And that weekend I was just me in those scenes, nothing. I was just studying those scenes, like I did nothing else except eat. And I got to the audition, and I left the script on the floor, like it was like ingrained in my brain. And I remember getting into the room, and it's like the casting director, I think probably casting assistant, one of the EPs who's like, I think it was Erica Messer, who is like the queen. I call her the queen of Criminal Minds. That is her show. Probably another producer. And then Joe Montagna came up, and they're like, hey, do you want to see Robert's audition or read or whatever? And he's like, yeah, I'll watch it. Cause I got to know Joe a little bit. And I was like, oh God, now I'm like auditioning in front of the guy that
You're supposed to play. Yeah.
It was weird. And so it was like I had an audience of people, and I went through every scene. I had the script on the floor. I never even picked it up. And I swear I just blacked out. It was just, I couldn't tell you what happened.
Well, clearly you got it.
Yeah, I got it. Oh yeah. So I do these 4 scenes, which felt like an eternity that I don't even remember. And then when I was done, I like came back, and they all gave me the very like professional answer where it's like, all right, well, okay, well, thanks for coming.
We'll be in touch. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, all right, well, have a nice day. And then I left, and a few days later, they told me that I could still play the role. So I was like, thanks. And then, yeah, that was probably the one that really, like people saw and stuff.
So how do you approach playing a character that's already established? I mean, did you watch tape from Joe acting and try to ape because he has a very distinct delivery.
Yeah.
Sort of cocks his head a different. I mean, are you trying to do the same things?
Yeah, so I watched episodes obviously, and I didn't want to do an impression because it was supposed to be him younger.
Yeah.
He was just in the military. I don't know. He's not going to be that like slow talker, so I didn't want to just do that. What helped was the second episode I did, he directed, and I asked him like questions that about his character, and he basically gave me an answer of like, you're fine, don't worry about it. And even it was funny because we were shooting one of the scenes, and I said something to him because he was directing that day. I was like, hey, was that okay? And he's like, if I don't say anything, you're fine. And I was like, all right. So then every take I'm like, don't say anything. Don't say anything. So it was he really relaxed. I actually just saw him, I guess, about a month ago, because he has an office where I live, and we just caught up, and he is the nicest guy. In fact, on set, I don't know anyone, so I'm just, for breakfast or lunch, I'm just like, all the crew is together.
Yeah.
They've been together for years, and I'm just sitting by myself. And Joe comes up to me and just sits with me, and it's just me and him having lunch together. And from then on, it was like he was just been just a guy I could reach out to.
That's nice to hear, because you never hear the good stories. You only hear the bad stories.
Yeah.
That's
so,
nice.
I mean, he did punch me in the face one time. No,
well,
I'm just kidding.
he probably deserved it.
No, he's the nicest guy ever.
So even though we're recording this in October, it's not gonna play until February. But you do have a new movie coming out soon called Cannibal Comedians.
That's right.
Which we're about to premiere here in Tampa Bay. I think the day after we record this episode. But
which would have already happened.
Which already happened, yeah.
The theater caught fire. Everyone ran out.
This was, in fact, the last episode of our podcast. So you play a character called Carrie.
Yeah.
Spelt with a C, correct?
It's Carrey.
Yeah. And the movie's called Cannibal Comedians.
Or it's comedian.
Comedian, sorry, a comedian. There is only one comedian, or there's many comedians, but there's only one cannibal comedian.
Yeah.
I've lost the audience now. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved with that project, because there's a lot of Florida people involved in this.
Yeah, that was honestly a bit of not a coincidence. I had met Sean, who directed it. We were working at Universal Studios at Halloween Horror Nights and LA Horror Nights, and it was me, him, Aaron, who plays the cannibal, this guy Nick, who plays a small part in the movie, and we were all working at the same maze together. And he was telling me about a movie called Cannibal Comedian he wanted to do, and he kind of just like, he thought that my personality fit Carrie, which is weird because Carrie's like a douche, but I think he meant like I could play it,
or he has a very low opinion of you.
One of the two.
We'll find out.
Yeah. And then he felt that Aaron would be a good fit because Aaron is a cannibal in real life. No, he but his attitude too, like our personalities just all meshed together. And Sean had made films before in Florida, so I think he pulled people that he knew.
Yeah.
So,
did you see his previous film, Big Top Horror?
Big Top Evil.
Top Evil. Sorry.
Yes, I did. I did see. I know. Well, not before working on Cannibal.
Okay.
Because I had met him for the first time at Horror Nights.
So I mean, obviously, actors like to act. They like to eat. But how does someone sell the idea? Like, yeah, I want you to be in a movie. It's gonna be a slasher about a cannibal who tries stand-up comedy. I mean, that's kind of a you don't know how to take that. Are you joking with me right now? Is this a serious proposition?
No, that was an idea that it was so bizarre. That's why I loved it. It seemed so silly, and again, that's why I liked it. And I'm like, he could go in a lot of different directions. He could go like really kind of trashy horror with it. I say trashy, but it's a good
70s slasher.
Yeah. Maybe it's a wrong word, but which I like too. So I was like, I don't know what direction he could take it, and I read the script, and it's really like a guy trying to get into stand-up.
Yeah,
it really is, and I think that's why people are surprised by the movie. I think they go in expecting just like a gore fest with like stupid jokes, but it's actually stupid jokes during a gore fest.
Yeah. Well, what I think is interesting is he takes the horror seriously and he takes the comedy seriously too.
Yeah,
And I have a lot of friends who are stand-up comedians, and they have watched it, and when they see that first open mic, like, nailed it. Like, this is just how awkward and terrible most open mics are, which I find hilarious.
Yeah, I know Sean said one of the things he said that's funny, it's like, I tried to seriously pursue stand-up for about 6 weeks. He said it was awful. So I think he just wanted to bring that to the movie.
Well, I think it comes through. So that's Cannibal Comedian, and by the time you're hearing this podcast, it's probably out there streaming. I know this is sort of the end of their festival run. So looking at your career, and I know you're here visiting right now, and your family's coming to see Cannibal Comedian tomorrow night. Do they follow your career actively? Do they watch everything that you're in? And I don't want to say, are they proud of you? But like, do they understand what you do?
They definitely don't understand what I do. No, they do. They try to keep up, especially my mom. I mean, she tries to keep up with everything that I'm doing. And, you know, there are like, sometimes you book like little gigs here and there that I don't, maybe I don't mention to them just because I don't know, like, they're always looking for like the next.
Yeah. They don't need to know if you're in a toothpaste commercial.
Right. But no, they're super supportive. Not my family has never been super film savvy.
Yeah.
So I usually have to like break it down.
It's all right. My parents still tell people I finger paint because they don't understand what I actually do. So
unless it's
some artsy thing,
unless it's directed by Steven Spielberg and I'm acting with Tom Hanks, like they'll never know.
So are you one of those actors who can watch themselves on the screen, or you just cringe the entire time?
I usually cringe the first time. Like if I'm at a premiere for something and I haven't like pre-screened it, I'm just like, please don't suck, you know, me, not the movie. Like I'm like, please,
movie can be terrible as long as I nailed myself.
As long as like I'm okay. But after I see it and I'm like, all right, it's pretty good, you know, then I can watch it over and over again.
So it's getting harder and harder to be not an actor, but if you're serious about getting into feature films and living in Florida. I don't hold it against anyone if they try to move somewhere else, because you have to go where the work's at. So a little bit of advice time. That's how I like to wrap some of these things up. So if there is another actor out there in Spring Hill or Brooksville listening right now, and like, man, I really want to get in acting. I'm just not getting opportunities, and I want to move to California, LA or otherwise, or maybe New York. What's a good piece of advice from your own experience? Like when you first got out there, like what set you apart, not within the film industry, but just gave you the opportunity to pursue what you wanted to do?
Well, the advice I'd give if you're thinking about acting, like if you haven't done it before and you're in Spring Hill or anywhere, take some classes, and not even just to get, you know, to harness your craft, to see if you even like it.
Yeah.
That's the big thing, because, you know, we had been joking around about like my horror stories starting out in Florida. At the end of the day, I still wanted to pursue it, even after all that, which I feel like any normal person would have been like, screw this, like this is terrible. So I would say take classes to see if you even like it. Because I've been in acting classes in Florida, and I remember people getting into them, and I would see them like lose interest. They'd be like, man, I'm just not into it today. And the teacher would be like, you have to be in it every day. And they're like, well, not today, you know, and they're just not in. And then they never take another acting class. And that's fine, because it's just not for them.
Yeah.
And so I would say do that first, go out to a few auditions in your area. And then that's when you determine like, am I ready to like move out, like move my whole life to another city to do this too? To do more of it.
Yeah.
So that would be like, test yourself.
That's great advice, because even people who are serious about acting, there's a big difference between theater acting and acting in front of the camera. And the thing I hear all the time is that if you're acting in front of an audience, it's immediate feedback. There's energy in the room, and you know, you're running through it, and then you're done.
Right.
And in film, you get there and it's like, I got to do the same thing, keep the same energy up over and over again. And maybe there's a 3-hour wait in between scenes. Like, how do you keep yourself motivated? And to your point, if you're not really into it, if you're not really enjoying it, it becomes a chore and not something you actually want to do a career around.
Because sometimes you'll like do a performance and maybe it's an emotional scene and you're like giving it everything, man. And then, the director's like, all right, cut. And then everyone just goes back to work and you're like, what was that? Was that good? Like, it's like tears down my face. I'm like, wait a minute.
Give me some confirmation here. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you were fine, as they're getting a donut. And I'm like, all right, cool. So
that's rough.
Yeah, that's rough, I tell you. But yeah, that's what I would say.
So what's next for you? Are you auditioning anything? Is there anything actually even? Well, actually, I should say at the time we're recording this, we're still under a strike right now for SAG.
Yeah.
So we probably should talk about that a little bit. It has been a tough summer for actors and writers. Actually, anyone in the film industry, because crew aren't working either right now.
Yeah, it's making me worried because I don't know if I'm going to get DVDs at the end of the year. That's what I'm worried about with this strike.
Yeah.
No,
screener copies.
Yeah, where are my screeners, man? Hey, yeah, it's been rough, very quiet. Now, like, there's been some very rare auditions coming through that, because there's some productions that have like agreements and stuff, but few and far between. And so it's, there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, I've gone and joined the picket lines before. And it's actually a really, it's a really good feeling environment. You maybe they'll show you pictures of like, angry people, but you get there and it's like your fellow actors and no one's like screaming at you. And it's a really nice environment actually. But yeah, that's all I can do for now is just support and just hope negotiations go okay. And yeah.
Well, hopefully by the time you're listening to this, the strike is over. If it's not, then the industry's in real big trouble.
And we're working so much, it can't stop working.
Yeah, I hope so. Particularly in Tampa Bay, we could use some productions to come back here too. Yeah, I mean, we didn't lose a lot, but I think there was 5 or 6 features that should have shot over the summer that have now pushed.
Yeah, and it's just so beautiful over here.
Yeah.
Like, I would film something over here in a heartbeat.
I wish the state would be a little more film friendly, but that's not going to happen. Well, Robert, it's been fantastic talking with you. If people want to see some of the things that you've done, is there anything streaming right now that you might want to point them towards?
No, it's really Cannibal is doing the festival run. I did another movie called Give Me My Money, which is in post still. Man, I would say they could check out Criminal Minds, but if they want, they could follow me on social media. That's where I post all the things that I'm doing, everything from acting roles to check out this parking spot I got, like right in front,
So if they wanted to follow you on social, what's your handle?
It's ITS Robert Dunne, DUNNE.
Okay, across Instagram and all the things.
Yeah, across Instagram, X.
Still a thing, maybe.
Yeah. And TikTok, I guess I sometimes
I don't do
dabble in
the TikToks, but
we'll do a TikTok after this. So
that is not going to happen. Well, Robert, thank you so much. Please check out Cannibal Comedian. It should be out by the time this podcast is rolling. And with that, we'll be right back. And we're back. That was a great episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked listening to it again.
We record these when we have an opportunity when someone comes in. So
yes.
Robert was good enough to come in to interview with us when he was on his festival tour with Cannibal Comedians. We were showing it during what was it, Nightmare on Franklin Street at Tampa Theater.
Yeah.
Obviously that's past now, but hopefully there was some really good information in there. What was some of the takeaways?
Well, I really liked how he talked about his journey to LA and then back because, I want to keep Florida guys in Florida. But, if you're trying to make it, I think that he had really solid advice for acting.
Yeah. I mean, incredible story, right? I mean, he came out of little podunk town nowhere, way north of Tampa Bay. And somehow he still found his way into a very successful creative career acting. So I thought that was a really inspiring story. What did you take away?
Yeah, same thing. I just think the importance of networking, again,
Yeah.
seems to come up in so many of these interviews. And it's not just about getting out there and doing the work, but also developing and managing that brand. And how are you going to continue to present that and present yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've said it many times in the past, and I think we've had guests say it as well. It's really important to network. The people that you find success with in the past, you can find success with them again in the future.
Yeah.
And really the only way to do that is to maintain a relationship. Don't burn bridges. Always be respectful to people around you, not just coworkers, but people you sort of run into tangentially. You don't know where those people are going to be at or where they're going to go.
Yeah.
So
Or
one
what they're
thing,
going to be working on.
yeah,
in 5 years.
absolutely.
Mhm.
So one thing that did come up is, Cannibal Comedians is going around different festivals right now. And speaking of networking, I think a great way to network yourself as a filmmaker is not only submitting your material to various film festivals, but also going and attending film festivals, going to those screenings. I always say there's no point in submitting a film to a festival if you cannot or do not have the means to go to that festival should you get in.
Yeah.
If your movie plays in a forest and no one's there to see it, does anyone care?
Yeah,
It's that kind
no.
of syndrome. So, Hilary, you have a huge past in film festivals. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background as far as film fests go?
Sure. So I started working for film festivals when I was attending SCAD as a film student. A lot of people were focused on actually making movies, but I realized that I had this love for exhibition and getting movies out there and actually seen by people. So for the last 15-ish years, which feels like a really long time now, I have been a film festival gypsy, traveling around to different film festivals when I can.
In fact,
Sundance.
you just got back from Sundance.
Yeah. I was able to go to Sundance again this year, which is really exciting. I hadn't been since before the pandemic. Sundance, Miami, Savannah, Palm Beach, Action Fest. There have been, at this point, probably close to 100. But yeah, doing everything from box office to theater management to programming and guest services and things like that.
I think this was one of the first, maybe the second year where everything was just full speed since post-pandemic. What was the energy like this past year you went?
I mean, it's hard to beat the energy at Sundance. It's definitely one of the top film festivals in the U.S. for a reason. One of the things that I absolutely love about seeing movies at film fests is that you've got that cool crowd energy. Everything is sold out. You've got people that are clapping or cheering or gasping if it's something particularly violent. So you have this whole as a filmmaker, you're able to see in real time the reactions to your film instead of just going, okay, well, I think people are going to laugh here. I think people are going to, this is where people are going to get emotional. You actually get to be in the room with them and feel that vibe. And there's something really magical about that.
Just as it happens, I was watching some behind the scenes from Broken Lizard comedy guys who do Super Troopers.
Yeah.
And, you edit a movie, you write a movie, you hope the jokes land, but they were talking about really the first time that they know whether the movie's going to work or not is by going to their first screening or a festival. And what they do is that they record the audience's reaction during the actual screening of the movie. And then they lay that audio down over their edit and see where the laughs are at and does it correspond to where they were hoping the jokes were going to land at.
I love that.
And if it doesn't pair up after a couple of tries, they don't just go off of one example, but if a couple of tries, they will literally get rid of scenes because it's not working. And even if they're laughing at it, if the audience doesn't laugh, they're taking that account or that reaction into account. So I thought it was really fascinating. That also came out of the idea of attending film festivals and screenings.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the importance of just getting that audience reaction is amazing. Unfortunately, the pandemic really hurt festivals. A lot didn't survive. Some did. Certainly something like Sundance will survive just about anything. But when they tried switching over to virtual, it just wasn't the same. It
was not.
It didn't work.
And one of my favorite things about screening Cannibal Comedian while it was on its festival run was the energy of the panel.
Yeah.
And I think you can't really experience that if you're not there in person with a mic in your hand, asking the questions to your heroes or a filmmaker that you just watched their film and you're feeling inspired.
Yeah.
So, and like Robert said in the interview, just about it being an actor, you need to test out and see if you like it because you need to show up 100% every day.
Yeah.
And I think that goes for, the festival run and showing your movie and being prepared and ready for those panels and being, presentable on stage and ready for the heightened energy of like a Sundance,
Yeah.
And not just being presentable, but being present and being there and willing to take in whatever the moment is going to give you and whoever you're going to meet. Like there's a lot of unexpected things happening at a film festival. And so you not only have to be prepared, but also be prepared to like totally let all of that go.
I think that's super important. People hate press junkets, especially actors to hate press junkets because the same canned questions over and over again. You have no idea, especially when it's not a moderated Q&A session or they turn it over to the audience. You have no idea what someone's going to ask. And sometimes it's a stupid question. You're like, I wish I was the one asking the question. You wasted a slot. Or it's something so out there and off the wall. It's like, oh, are they going to actually answer this? Like, that's ballsy to say that or ask that. And that's the moments that I love. You really only capture live at film festivals. So let's talk a little bit more from your programming experience. For people who are finishing up their first short film or their first feature and they're looking to jump in on the festival circuit, what are some just good practices to looking at and researching festivals, and then when you're actually submitting, what kind of materials should they be looking at?
Okay. In terms of submitting to festivals and finding festivals, you definitely want to think about, like you said, realistically, what you're going to be able to attend. A lot of people think that submitting your film to a festival ends like when that movie makes it into the festival or you get that screening time. No, your work as a filmmaker continues far beyond that. You need to be ready to be there to talk to people with business cards, with other materials, because there are going to be people at those screenings that might see the movie and then might want to take that elsewhere. So just constantly looking for good quality film festivals. There are a lot of scams online, unfortunately, especially with like screenplay competitions. You want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence, looking up the festival, finding out how many years have they been running. Are they actually putting on events? Are they putting on events for filmmakers where I'm going to have an opportunity to connect with other people? And just looking for strong festivals, whether that's like a strong regional festival if you're not ready for Sundance yet. But you never know who you're going to meet at that film festival. So just be ready to be there and be present and kind of see where that leads you.
Yeah. And, some people might differ in this, but I am not a shotgun style submission person where it's like, I'm going to submit to 1 million festivals, and even the ones that are junky in someone's backyard, like those don't help your film move anywhere, right? It doesn't have the right eyes on it, and sometimes you see these films and it's got like 25 laurels on it and you've never heard of a single one of those film festivals.
Yeah.
That's not helping your craft. It's not helping position your movie or your short film. All it is an expression of your own ego, I think, at that point. And I think that's a trap some filmmakers can fall into. So it's really about researching where best your film can land. If you just made a super underground indie slasher film, maybe don't submit to Hot Docs, right? Like you're not getting in there. Why are you doing this? But you see this happen, especially on the programming side. If you've worked for film festivals, you're just looking at these films that are submitted sometimes. It's like, why did you submit to our film festival? Why did you submit in this category? This makes no sense. And again, it's just shotgun effect. We're going to click, because it's so easy on Film Freeway now. It's just like click a button, click a button, click a button, and it auto submits your film to these festivals. That's not a great way to approach this.
No, you want to find a festival that resonates with the content of your film, the meaning of your film. If it's in an area that is like regionally appropriate, say you've made a film about scuba diving in Florida, maybe submit to some Florida festivals instead of sending it to Kansas or something. So think about where are the people that are going to watch this movie, in addition to who are the people that are going to actually move this movie along in its lifetime.
To me, sometimes that's kind of the wild thing about film festivals. When we attended Telluride, we went to a screening of the film called Card Counter. Yeah. And it was Oscar Isaac and Willem Dafoe. And Card Counter, the poster had like poker on it, and it ended up being a movie about torture. So it was just it was written by Paul Schrader, obviously, writer, a taxi driver, and it was a very good movie, but it was draining. And then right after that, following that screening, I went to Marcel the Shell and Me, the feature film, and it was just a completely different energy, but it was the palate cleanser that I needed at the time. And I think I experienced that so uniquely and love Marcel the Shell because I watched it right after that.
Yeah. I mean, if it didn't have Oscar Isaac or Paul Schrader in it, or sorry, Paul Schrader wasn't the producer and director and writer on it, I don't think that movie would have played at Telluride that particular year. And you could tell it just because of how they're positioning the film. Like, they completely held back on any description about the Guantanamo tie-in. They didn't mention torture. I mean, they literally, it was a rope-a-dope where it's like, look over here, not over here. And the audience was not into it.
Yeah.
But that's also a fun thing, too. Like, that's my favorite part of going to Cannes is French audiences have no problem catcalling a screen. So if they don't like a movie, they will boo, they will hiss, they will throw stuff. I mean, they are not into a movie that you know it.
Man, I want to go. I've never been to
which is
Cannes.
great because the filmmakers are there, too. Like, and you get to see them respond to that. So it's always fun.
Either of you, a question for both of you, been to a screening where watching it in a film festival setting made it that much more enriching to you, where if you watched it at home, it just wouldn't land the same?
Yes, actually. And it's another Telluride example. So I really liked watching Power of the Dog with an audience. I thought that was just and it had the full cast and crew there. Everyone was there for the Q&A afterwards, and people were appreciative, and they really went into talking about the movie afterwards. I really liked it in that atmosphere. And then a couple months later, it was streaming all of a sudden. It's like, oh, I want to revisit that movie again. And I sat there and I was just bored to tears. Like, it didn't have the energy that was in the room when I watched it the first time.
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think having to be there in person, like I said, is totally part of the magic of film festivals. But then you also have these like bizarre things that'll happen. My first year at Sundance, I went to a Documentary Now screening with Fred Armisen and a few other people. But then the guy that showed up to host the Q&A was Joe Berlinger, and everyone else like didn't quite realize like who it was. And I was like, oh my God, he's here. He's a true crime documentary filmmaker, has also recently branched into some narrative pieces, but like he was not listed as being involved at all. But it was so cool to see him like show up and be part of that.
Yeah.
We've been to a couple of film festivals. I've been to a lot of film festivals. You've been to a lot of film festivals. What is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you at a film festival?
The weirdest thing that's happened.
That's a really good question.
We can cut out the dead air. You can think for a second.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. When I was doing guest services for the Savannah Film Festival, one of our guests was Mike Myers, and he was being flown in on a private jet. So I had to go do some grocery shopping for him. And I still remember the list. It was like 2% Faggy yogurt, apple slices, fresh blueberries, and Doritos. But it didn't specify what flavor Doritos. And so I went back. I was like, no, I don't want to get him the wrong flavor of Doritos. So I went back and I watched Wayne's World. Well, at the time Wayne's World was made, there was only one flavor of Doritos. I'm like, that's not good enough. So I went and I bought every single flavor of Doritos because I was determined not to like let down Mike Myers like and have it be the wrong flavor.
I mean, that was literally the joke of the Groundhog Day Doritos commercial this year for the Super Bowl.
Oh.
Where he kept going in line, but he had to repeat the day. And the joke was he had to keep repeating it until he ran out of Doritos flavors, and they never ran out of Doritos
That's
flavors.
So funny.
So that was
I'll
fun.
have to watch that.
What about you, Jesse?
I am coming up with a blank. I'm sorry.
That's
I don't have a good answer for that. But we can talk a little bit about our own film festival.
Yeah. We'll get to Gasparilla, but I have my own story.
Yeah. Well, of course, after your story. Yeah.
So
what about you?
this was local film festival, Sunscreen Film Festival over in St. Petersburg. Happens right after the Gasparilla Film Festival, which we'll talk about in a second. But this is about 6-7 years ago. No longer than that. I mean, over 10 years, actually. We were doing a horror movie screening, and we got the filmmakers up there afterwards for Q&A, and it was going well, whatever. And then we switched it over to the audience question part of the Q&A. And we handed a microphone to this woman, puts her hand up, and we handed her the microphone, and we're expecting a question. And all of a sudden, she just starts talking in a different language. Not like a foreign language, like a made-up pig
like
Latin.
Speaking in tongues?
Speaking in tongues, yes. And we're like, what is going on? Is she having a stroke? Like, what is, we were worried for a second. And then she got down on her knees and started praying and starts talking about how the movie invited a devil into the room and that we were now all possessed and she needs to exorcise all of us. And she totally hijacked the entire Q&A.
Oh, God.
And we don't know what to do. Like, I start trying to talk over her and going back to like, let's focus on the filmmakers, and she will not stop. The usher tries to pull the microphone away from her, and she hits him with it. and then keeps going and praying the spirits away.
Oh, wow.
So I politely invited the filmmakers out into the hallway of the movie theater where we continued the conversation by ourselves with the rest of the people that left. And she was in there just screaming and ranting and doing things.
This actually explains a lot because you're always a little bit apprehensive about an audience Q&A.
I've
like,
had
let's
audience
make sure-
Q&As go horribly wrong.
Yeah,
in the
that's
past.
PTSD.
It's kind of funny. You never know what they're going to ask.
Or what they're going to just randomly comment
with,
and talk about
Yeah.
for 10 minutes that has nothing
Nothing
related
to do
the
with
movie.
anything. And the worst is when they it's not a question, it's a compliment, and they just go on and on like, "Oh, you're my favorite movie." It's like, we're here to get a question answered. Like, please stop doing that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Drives me
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
we do have
Yeah.
our own film festival coming
Yeah.
up. What is it, Jesse Brock?
Gasparilla International Film Festival, and it is March 21st through March 24th.
It is our 17th year as a film festival, which is a point of pride. Most film festivals do not make it past year 2. I think even fewer make it past year 10, but here we are 17 years strong.
Yeah.
And it is always a good time. So we know what our opening night movie is going to be.
Well, when this episode comes out in February, the entire lineup of Gasparilla Gasparilla International Film Festival movies with their dates and times will be released in a week.
Yeah. But we do know that our opening night movie is a movie called Cash Out with John Travolta and the rapper Quavo. They'll both be there in attendance, and it should be a good time. And we'll be sure to post where they can get tickets below the link. All right. Anything else, ladies?
That's it.
Well, that is another wrap on our Days of Future Past podcast. We will try not to do this again where we record something months ago and then have to push
I
it
should
out
have
later.
said we were Back to the Future.
Oh, you should
what
have.
a missed opportunity, but I'll say it now.
Okay. Where can they find us Back to the Future, Jesse?
We are Loose Framing Podcast. Stream us anywhere you listen to podcasts or watch us on YouTube. And don't forget to follow us at Film Tampa Bay.
And with that, we'll see you next time.